I think we started off by looking at more of an information dissemination system, where we essentially started giving people what is the information, how can you test yourself.
So we took the CDC guidelines in the US and incorporated them into Buoy such that we were screening people who had the right symptoms or who were worried about coronavirus to essentially be the go-between on the supply and the demand side of healthcare, knowing that right now the demand is massive.
So when we saw the pandemic hit, what we did is we've extended our conversational technology we already have in place and put it as an open source project and deployed it in an open, free way.
We are working on a telephone bot where elderly people and people who don't have access to the internet, which is more than 50% still of the global population, can call by phone and get information about Corona. A caller can talk with the bot and can speak with live agent if there's any interruption or problem with understanding by the bot.
We have a chatbot platform called Contact Center AI. It's an enterprise edition, and it enables clinics and digital health companies to implement local chatbots.
And we have a chatbot that gives information, triaging, but the emphasis is really trying to give reassurance to people and very much trying to get people to understand why they need to stay at home, isolate if they need to. Those who are more at risk, identify those, especially those who are on their own, give them some feedback.
In Orbita, you publish out the experience to SMS or to even phone. Some of the most at-risk populations, the aging population, the phone and SMS are still the tools of choice. And so we're now offering the screening and navigation tools across those.
So in Microsoft, we're helping healthcare organizations during this crisis by offering the healthcare bot platform to organizations in the front line of the COVID-19 response to help them create chatbots for COVID-19. We've worked with the CDC who released the COVID-19 assessment bot based on our platform.
I think that there's a big tension between building something that is very quick for a user to get through versus something that's can give more reassurance because it's more in-depth. The bureaucracy that you're alluding to, we've kind of faced a lot of our different clients half of the medical team will want something very fast and, just get to a quick answer, while the other half will want something that is more in-depth. And what we've found is that the hard part is when you say no, like when you say you're at low risk, giving people a better understanding of what it could be instead is actually the biggest reason why you can get someone to self-isolate and do something that doesn't clog up the typical health system. And so kind of balancing those two things for the end user, but with your client kind of at the core here has been a really challenge for us.
So availability of data sets is certainly a barrier. There are legitimate privacy considerations to be dealt with, but it certainly requires an unusual effort to make sure that this data set becomes available to AI researchers. How do you put something up on the public web in 2 days, but then kind of reconcile that with how the healthcare system works?
We operate in the UK, but we also operate in many countries. We find that moving quickly to help somewhere in a country that the medical regulatory landscape is quite unknown. That's kind of beyond COVID. That's something that needs to be understood. We're in 11 countries in Asia, and each one of them is slightly different, for example. But it's also the data sovereignty issues. All the countries don't want that data to leave the country, which is totally understood, but not everyone's got a cloud provider in the country.
We also toe that balance in terms of how do you get something up quickly? How do you deploy it out to the right channels in the most appropriate way? I think the nice thing is that the tech has been around long enough now that I think most of the folks on the panel today would agree. We know a lot of what we're dealing with, and so it's a lot of time just spent educating and building up that trust and understanding with folks that are new to the table. But what an opportunity to rise to the occasion.
We as Omnibot, we use these AI deep learning technologies to understand the intent of the user or the caller, for example, on the telephone line, to understand what the person is talking about, what the intent is, to, for example, to find out how many people are infected in my city or in my region. And that's the most important part of where the AI in place is the speech recognition. So transcribing speech to text, understanding the texts, the intent of the caller, for example, or the chat person chatting with a bot.
But I think the framework that we've built in does use deep learning and AI. But for this particular chatbot for COVID, we wanted to do it faster. And we wanted to ensure that the context as well as the semantics is understood correctly. Not just in English, but also in all the other languages. So essentially, we use a simple machine learning approach rather than going into deep learning. And also make sure that we have data sets of connected points between these languages so that people could talk simply. Type text, which is good in India, but speaking is much more of a challenge on smartphones in India. So we had to do it contextually in Indian base.
That the information that is being circulated around is uncertain. So if we were to automate the chatbot, it's unclear what the automation should propagate further to the end consumer. So a purely scripted approach works better because you can control it, and you can basically, you can control the message, you can control the dialogue. Behind the scenes, we've seen that deep learning can still be applied at the analytics step, where you're trying to aggregate high-level insights, and for that you need more deep analysis of the semantics, more relational analysis of the information that was conveyed in in the chatbot conversation.
We've seen it in very diverse use cases. General symptom triage, whether it's just flu triage or just any symptom triage, finding a location, scheduling appointment, getting information, finding providers. Coronavirus was kind of, I would say, an accelerator to the adoption of chatbots, because it demonstrates the usefulness of this type of technology, but we see the need and the use cases potentially all across the board.
The core problem that we're trying to solve is really highlighted by COVID, but existed kind of in non-COVID times too, which is when you get sick, you all of a sudden have to morph into a doctor or a medical student to figure out what to do when you're sick. And so Buoy, has been around, and we've trained our AI to understand all sorts of illnesses, from pediatrics to geriatrics and kind of everything in between. And so our day jobs is to help people navigate a really complex healthcare system that is difficult to navigate, in large part because it's hard to know exactly what to do from a clinical perspective. And then layered on top of that, in the United States, healthcare is very complex, from what's in or out of network, for instance. So COVID just happened to be, an accelerant is a great word, but also just a very focused microcosm of the general problem that we're solving, again, in non-COVID times.
So we have a digital front door that seeks to solve some of the same problems around, triaging patients to the right place, addressing some of their concerns, navigating them to the right services. We are doing virtual waiting rooms now for telemedicine, where we are actually augmenting that latency between when you initiate the visit and when the provider comes on, so that you're doing any screening or assessment during that latency, and then that time with the provider is really spent, is meaningful. One silver lining of this pandemic is that seeing folks come together to really launch these initiatives at scale is unprecedented. And so from our perspective, it's a great time to use that tech to truly scale frontline public health response.
I think this particular crisis is showing people how a lot more people being comfortable with using chatbot first, digital first, because in the world there are more people with a mobile phone than they have access to healthcare.
So a country of 1.3 billion people, one of the biggest problem that we have to deal with, especially in a condition like a COVID pandemic, is the misinformation. Now people have so much access to technology, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, and there are so many rumors and there is so much misinformation out there. That it's very important to build reliable technology which can provide a source of a credible information. Credible information with regard to testing, treatment, precautions, your basic things. At the same time, you also have a constraint of manpower. I can't institutionalize, something like a call center. So the idea is that, how to have a trade-off between credible information and limited use of manpower. And for that, we thought that, a chatbot, which is powered by something like a natural language processing, would be the most ideal way to go forward.
How can you get involved going forward? Please either speak to Arunima or Sundar, who co-lead this work. And also, one of the things that I have been saying is that it's really important that we move forward with the technology so that we can conquer coronavirus together. But also, we shouldn't simply throw the ethics babies out of the bath. Or at least if we do and we have to move fast, we should have a route back so that we can make sure that the chatbots of the future are really imbued with those ethics compliance in them.